so I don't think I need to be mic'd. My voice is pretty loud in here, right? All right, hello everybody and welcome. I'm really excited to share this today, this concept I developed called G.R.O.W. It's a bit of cocktail philosophy about how to build a balanced and brilliant life. So, a little bit about me to start. My name is Strom. I am married with 2 kids, 19 and 22. I'm half Korean, half Colombian. I was raised in the Midwest, but I'm based in Miami. My passions, some of my biggest passions are yoga, travel, reading, Star Trek, anything sci-fi. So if any of you guys share any of those passions, please come up and talk to me at the break. I'd love to geek out with you. In terms of my career, I spent 16 years in hospitality, all in the front of the house. Started in fast food, eventually became a hostess at a Shoney's, then I became a waitress and then a bartender. I spent 25 plus years in the adult beverage business, starting as a rep on South Beach for RNDC, before the R. And I've spent the last almost 24 years at G.R.O.W, culminating in a role running the national accounts on-premise team. My favorite cocktail is the Paloma, but my true passion is champagne. Okay, so I would probably start with my intention for the day. My intention is to share the concept, the framework. Next, explain how it works and how it works and how it will drive satisfaction. Next, I'll share some wisdom from the bar, but my main goal is to inspire you guys to implement this in your own lives. Okay, let's start first. Speaking of satisfaction, let's look. Are Americans satisfied? So what we're looking at right here is a Gallup happiness scale. We see data going back from 2002 to 2024. As you can see right now, we're at 47% of Americans are very satisfied with their lives. That's kind of alarming. It is the second lowest point since 2002. The only time lower is in 2012. That's a reaction to the 2008-2009 collapse when things were, people were trying to build their lives back. It's interesting, do you see where it peaks at 2020? You guys remember what's happening in 2020? It's kind of interesting that that's when American most happiest. My thought is that when everything went to pieces and everyone had to figure out what they wanted to do, it was really led by their hearts. U.S. has actually fallen now. We're falling from 15 to 23 in the world happiness scale. And what's even more alarming is that young people are the least happy of all. So this looks like a happiness crisis, right? I think America clearly needs this growth system. All right, so let's get into it. Let's look at this cocktail right here in front of us, right? What's the best cocktail what's the best compliment that this cocktail can receive after someone has taken a sip? What's the nicest thing someone can say about that cocktail?
Delicious.
Delicious.
I want another one.
Unique. All those are great. I would argue that all those attributes are fed by this attribute, though, being balanced. A perfectly delicious cocktail must be balanced, right? So, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a foolproof recipe and a way to make a balanced cocktail every time? But of course, there is. Now, I know this because this is a hospitality group. You guys have heard of it. Maybe you guys have not heard of this over here, our guests on the side here. It's the golden ratio of cocktails, also called the bartender's golden ratio. But I like to call it the golden ratio of cocktails because it makes this amazing acronym, the GROC. And after 25 years in the corporate world, I love an acronym. So, it's 2 parts strong, that's the spirit. 1 part sweet, that's the sweetening agent, usually simple syrup, agave nectar, something like that. And then 1 part sour, which is fruit juice, naturally, generally fresh citrus. And it yields a balanced cocktail every time. Here's how it works in action. So if you look at some of the classic cocktails we all know, margarita, 2 ounces tequila, 1 ounce agave syrup, 1 ounce of lime juice. Whiskey sour is the same. 2 ounces whiskey, 1 ounce simple syrup, 1 ounce lemon. Even more esoteric cocktails that maybe perhaps everybody hasn't heard of, the BCs follow this same ratio. So why does this matter? So it's simple, it's easy to execute, it's reliable, delivers a balanced cocktail every single time. It's scalable. So I showed you recipes with ounces here, but you could also use cups, pitchers. You're having a really big party, you can make your garbage cans. And it's a great roadmap for experimentation. So you can play around with the spirit, whether you like tequila or bourbon, whatever. You can play around with the ratios a little bit. You might like a little more sweet or a little more sour. But it's important to know that you can't mess with the ratios too much. And to quote my good friend John Lermayer, who we all remember here in South Florida, he says that making cocktails is more like baking than cooking. If you mess with the ratios and you mess with the recipe too much, the whole thing can go south. Hi, come on.
Hey, what's up, Chris?
So, I promise you this is going to be about driving satisfaction in your life. So let's talk about life. So, what's the best compliment that you can give to a life goal? Hey, you're right! right, it's balanced once again. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a recipe to teach us how to live a balanced life? Well, there is. Let's start. I got this light coming up first. All right. So let's start. What does our first view of a balanced life look like? We've all probably seen this, right? Work hard, play hard. But that doesn't seem like it's really enough, right? Is work life, is happiness binary? It seems like something like Gordon Gekko would say, greed is good. Well, we've advanced from that. That's 90s. There's a third leg that's needed to give us stability. But what is that third leg? Well, the answer lies in the GROC. So this golden ratio is so perfect that not only does it teach us how to build a balanced cocktail, it teaches us pretty much, it gives the balance, recipe for balance in every situation. It's really the golden ratio of everything. Or, we call it the golden ratio of the world, which makes this amazing acronym GROW, right? Okay. So, the GROW system, here's how we're going to translate it. 2 parts strong. This is actually work. So it's not just work, I want to be clear, not just how to succeed in your career, but how to succeed in everything that takes effort, which is really pretty much everything worth doing, right? Consider it this way, it's 2 parts because it is so important. It's showing up and doing your best, brilliant execution, but it's also doing it every day. It's about consistency. It's about effort and persistence. The sweet is about what brings you happiness, what makes your heart sing, doing what your heart wants to do. And the second part here, third part, is sour. Think of that as like reaching, stretching yourself to your dream. So I made it go with sour because picture you, everyone's seen a baby actually tasting citrus for the first time, right? And we're all laughing because we've seen the videos, we've seen it in real life, right? They reach out, they put it in their mouths, they shudder, they freak out. But what happens is they pull themselves together and they reach for it again, right? So sour in this situation stands for stretching for the future, stretching to grow. Once again, this is going to deliver a balanced life every time. So why does it matter? It's simple, though not always as easy to execute as with the cocktails. It is reliable and delivers balance every time. It's scalable, whether you're considering a day in your life, a month, but more importantly, a lifetime. And it's also a great roadmap for experimentation as you lead your life and you lean into opportunities that come along your way. So another way to look at it, to really simplify it, is what I have to do, what I want to do, and what I want to be. This is so simple and essential, it really makes sense, right? So if you think about it, work without passion is going to lead to burnout and bitterness. Passion without ambition is going to lead to stagnation. And ambition without work, well, that's not going to lead anywhere, right? So I want to tell you about how I came to this concept because I didn't actually know about it my entire life. So this is young me getting ready to go out and start in the world. I was an angsty kid. Come on in. Come on in. Hi.
Creepy.
We're just sharing. All right. So I was an angsty kid. Sat around my room, wrote poetry. Wondered why I was the only one who cared. I kept encountering adults who were telling me, "This is the best time in your life. This is the prime time. I hope you're enjoying it." And I don't know about you guys, but high school, that wasn't so great for me. It was a really depressing idea that this was the pinnacle of happiness, and from here on out, it was all downhill. And at the same time, I encountered adults who were sacrificing today, their health, ultimately their happiness, for a future that wasn't guaranteed. So I decided I didn't want to be a prisoner to either of those scenarios. All I had to do was get out in the world and take control. I was going to make sure that while I lived every moment for today, that my best days were always going to be in front of me. So I couldn't wait to get to college and get started. So let's talk about what happened when I went to college here. So I went to University of Florida, go Gators. I went to major in aerospace engineering. But actually it's here that that's not where I landed, you can tell. But it's here that I discovered my true skill, my #1 passion, which is going out, right? I think some of you guys might share that passion with me, I guess. So I realized pretty quickly aerospace engineering was not for me. I chose it for the wrong reasons, because I was good at high school math, I was Asian, make a lot of money. None of those reasons were good enough to stay me. So I just quit going to those classes, which really freed me up to spend a lot more time in my #1 skill zone, right? But let me ask you guys, do you think I was satisfied, balanced, fulfilled? successful? No, I wasn't any of those things, actually. But while I wasn't going to my engineering classes, I did go to my first psychology class. And I was introduced to Maslow and his famous hierarchy of needs. So if you've ever taken a psychology class, you've probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But there might be some among us who haven't, so I'll explain real quickly what it goes through. So the idea is that we have 5 basic needs, groups of needs, starting at the bottom here. And you have to fulfill your base needs before you can go up a level to try to fulfill the next need. Hi! Come on in. Base needs physiologically would be like food and water, right? Makes sense. If you don't have food and water, you can't start thinking about the next need, which is safety. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to sleep? I'm going to wake up. Everything's okay. Next need is belonging, social connection, love, friendship. And then the one after that, we go on to self-esteem. And then finally at the top is self-actualization, which is defined as living to your full potential. So it makes sense, but there's some things that aren't so great about this. So right away you can see if you don't have a certain amount of financial security, you're not even in the game, right? Secondly, self-actualization is a really fuzzy kind of thing. What is my full potential? How do I know I'm there? Who defines that? And then also, self-actualization is elusive. In fact, Maslow himself says only 1% of humans ever achieve self-actualization. And when he published his findings, he talked to a bunch of therapists, and therapists were telling him, oh, all of my patients say they're self-actualized. Maslow said, I just probably not explaining it right, because that's not how this works. So think of it, in this group, probably none of us have ever been self-actualized or will ever be self-actualized according to Maslow's model. So I didn't like that model. Now, let's compare it to the GRO. So Maslow's 5 needs, we've got 3 needs. It's simpler because 3 is smaller than 5, right? It's attainable where this one's elusive. But the biggest point here is that instead of some destination that we're trying for that nobody gets and keep getting kicked out of, with the GRO, self-creation is a journey. A life lived seeking this balance is happiness. Okay, so let's talk to my journey to GRO. Let's go back. This is me. Remember, I was a young student of failing in engineering school. I ended up dropping out, big surprise, and I had to support myself. So I ended up getting a job in hospitality. So what I had to do, what I wanted to do, and what I want to be, remember, is the framework here, right? So what I had to do was I had to figure out how to support myself. What I wanted to do was actually be in these bars. So remember my #1 skill, right? Right. So if I hadn't been out in bars making money, I would have been out in bars spending money. And what I wanted to be at this point was just independent, not asking anybody for money who didn't want to give it to me, my parents, right? I did that for a while, and once I gained my independence, I'm like, okay, I've got this. What's the next goal? So I decided to go back to school. I went back to school and I was still doing what I had to do because now I had to pay tuition as well. So I was still working in bars and restaurants, working for tips. What I wanted to do was still be in hospitality. I loved it. You know, even when the customers weren't so great, the hospitality family I made really nurtured my soul. And what I wanted to be at this point was a graduate in anything. I ended up graduating in organizational communications. Once I graduated, I had to find the next goal. You'd think it'd be a job, but not yet. I actually decided to go traveling. I met a bunch of people when I was on a trip to Europe who were traveling around the world for a year. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. So I came home, I saved up for a year, and I bought a ticket going west. I sold everything I owned, and I took off. Now, I didn't have enough money to make it all the way around, so I had to stop and get jobs under the table when I ran out of money. So that's what I had to do. What I wanted to do was travel and learn and see the world. And traveling taught me that I could handle anything that came my way, that I could do anything. And that's what I'd always wanted to be. So, once I got that kind of figured out, I realized it's time to come home. I need to maybe build for the future. And that's when I first got my first job in adult beverage business. And in this job, I found bartenders who were calling themselves mixologists. And they were bringing ideas that felt new to us, but were really old ideas that had mostly been forgotten. That is where I first encountered the GROC. And to me, it was really magic. It really lined up with the life I had already been living, but I didn't even realize that I was putting in these 3 buckets. And I realized that strong and sour aren't enough for a balanced cocktail, and they're not enough for a balanced life. And it's not just me, it's universal. These are the needs for everyone. So, we talked about the recipe. Now we're going to take some lessons from the bar. I've got 5 lessons from the bar that we're going to draw some inferences from to help us hit that balance that I've been talking about. Right. So lesson number 1, mix thoroughly for best results, right? We all know that a well-integrated cocktail is the best cocktail, right? But the same is true with life. So I showed you examples back there. It's how I was living in all 3 buckets. What I have to do, what I want to do, and what I want to be. But what I realized, just like a cocktail, when those are all integrated, it's the best outcome. So when I found this job in the booze business, finally what I had to do was what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be. And let me tell you, my friends, that is one intoxicating cocktail. One that frankly we all deserve. Lesson number 2, start with your sweet. Now I'm not talking about the kind of bartender I was back in the 90s making vodka crayons and woo-woo shots. I'm talking about the kind of bartenders you guys are today, making elevated, complicated works of art. They don't start with the sweet like we did when we were making those with the Strom, like I did when I was making those highballs. They start with the sweet. If they start with the spirit, it's expensive and it can get really pricey if they're making mistakes and having to throw it away. They start with the sweet. Then they add the sour, a little more expensive, and then finally they add the most expensive ingredient, the spirit. In this situation, like life, it's the same. If you start with your sweet, identify your sour, a goal that you want to stretch to, and then you put in the work, there's where the magic happens, right? And this time, if you do it that way, your work will flow freely. It'll be easy to give your best every day because you started with your sweet. And the point here too, you guys, is that this is an iterative process. Iterative meaning you repeat it, hoping for a better outcome each time. Every time you achieve a goal, you set a new one on the horizon, and you're leveling up your performance every time. And that is where you're truly mixing up magic. Next, know your customer. Lesson number 3. Your customer in this case is you. You know, a bartender always gets to know their customer, what their preferences are. So look at the drinks on the screen here. Any of these recognize, what was your first drink that you ordered, you guys? Picture yourself going out as a young person, ordering your first drink, your first cocktail in the bar. What did you order? Picture it in your head. You might even see it on the screen. Might have been a pina colada, something in Coke, the classic vodka cran. This is mine down here, Amaretto sour. I thought that's what you're sitting at. I thought that told the world that I was sophisticated and knowledgeable, a woman of the world. It was a fruit, like a sugar bomb, actually, right? But the reality is you need to understand. The main message here is balance isn't just set it and forget it. You need to make sure that you're checking in for who you are now. A situation that's perfect at 23 might not be as great at 25 or 33. By 43, it's kind of unrecognizable, right? All right, so now we know we have to know what our cocktail preference is, but how do we make sure? Well, the bartender taste test, right? We can taste periodically. A bartender will taste the cocktail at the beginning of every shift when they're making them to make sure that they're adjusting for the ingredients that they have. And every time there's a change in conditions, they taste again, like a new batch of juice. The same is true about life. You need to set a timeline, a framework for how you are checking in to say, am I living how I want to live? So there are a couple things I want to make sure you understand here too. This isn't about being constant, it's about being consistent. Remember, as the angsty kid, the expert on angst, too much pondering and tasting can lead to paralysis and feed the angst, right? Another thing we need to know is that sometimes, for some people, this will be a solitary process. If you're like me, you need a partner. You need to talk. I like to work collaboratively. I often say that I don't even know what I'm thinking until I hear myself say it, right? So the point is you need to set a rhythm to check in periodically. Okay, so we've established that you need to know what you drink and you need to have a rhythm to taste. Now we're going to go into how to assess our cocktail, and we're going to lean into the 3 classic serves here, right? So I want everyone to picture their life, and if your life is swimming along great, then picture a project you're working on or a team you're on, right? And we're going to use these 3 classic serves to assess where we are. So is your project or your life, whatever we're looking at, is it on the rocks? Things aren't going so great. Maybe you're frozen in place, you're not moving forward. Or perhaps you're one of the lucky ones, where everything is going straight up, right? So we're going to use the elements of the GR.O.W. to lead into these 3 assessments, all right? So first, is your cocktail on the rocks and not going well? So we're going to start first looking at Strom. So Perhaps it's not strong enough. You're not putting in enough work. You're not putting in the effort. That one's a pretty easy one to diagnose. You clearly need to up your strength. But in the meantime, you might need to strain out negative influences that are keeping you from peak performance. Maybe your cocktail is too strong and you don't have time for any of the other elements. In that situation, what's the issue here? It's unrealistic expectations. You need to look at your life and say, what is holding me back? What fear is keeping me from breaking free from these unrealistic expectations? And then you may even need to shake things up quite a bit and maybe consider moving on. Or perhaps, we're going to look at the next element here, perhaps the issue is there's not enough sour. Well, obviously, if there's not enough sour, it's not an ambition. You need to find the goal that's going to help you, kick it into gear. Or maybe it's too sour and you don't have the skills that you need. You're over your skis a bit. Well, you need to step back, take a realistic look at yourself, and create a plan to fill the gaps. Either way, the situation here is to stir things up just enough to get you going again, right? Okay, now we'll look at sweet. What if it's not sweet enough for you? Maybe your cocktail isn't giving you satisfaction. Maybe you're not happy. Maybe this isn't the right mission, and it might be time to consider a fresh start. Or what if the cocktail is too sweet? But wait a minute now. Is there really such a thing as too much happiness? I think the reality is you need to sip and enjoy this time, right? Now I realize that some of these aren't exactly what a mixologist would do, but humor me because the wordplay is so delicious, right? All right, so let's go to frozen. You got a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if you said at the beginning to do Chris for the end. I was late. I'm sorry.
No worries.
For you, what's the balance between, starting your cocktail over or maybe trying to fix it?
So I think it really has to dig into the sweet because sometimes, if you follow the process here, if the sweet is the issue, if you're, sweet might be keeping you from doing it strong enough. Like I said, assess it. Is it outside influences or is it you? If you go through the process here, you can find out. That's why I made sweet be last, because it's the last resort. If you've gone through every other step and you're still not having a balanced cocktail, then maybe at that point it's time to say, start fresh. All right, how about frozen? Maybe your cocktail's frozen. Now I am aware that I've had the diagnosis and the issue of being frozen, but as any bartender can tell you, frozen drinks are a big issue. So it is both here. But if you think about it, what do you do to fix a frozen cocktail? You need to add some liquid, right? In this case, it's going to be all three. You need to lean into your sweet, put in the work to level up your sour, blend it all together, and get moving again. All right? Got one more. What if you're one of the lucky ones? And like I said, your cocktail is straight up and everything is going really well. Well, you might think you don't need to do anything here, right? But what do when we have a cocktail that's complete? We need to garnish. We need to celebrate success, no matter how small. Now, I want you to consider the role of garnish is to enhance a cocktail. It's to enhance the aroma visually. It's to, and if you think about it in terms of what is celebration going to do, it's similar. We're enhancing connection and communication and actually building desire for more success. So, I'm winding it down. I'm a little faster than I thought, Marcy. This is my very first one, guys.
Killing it!
So, the G.R.O.W. I'm going to recap a little bit, you guys. I want you to trust yourselves. I want you to lean into your sweet, find a stretch goal that gives you happiness, allow your work, your strong, to flow freely, and relish the journey, and enjoy your cocktail of life. The bar wisdom, I'll recap it as well here. Mix thoroughly. Find an opportunity where all three needs are met in one focus. I want you to start with your sweet. Know your customer, know yourself. Taste periodically in a rhythm that works for you. Assess and take action, don't hesitate. And then finally, grow. I want to thank you guys for having me here today. Me being here today is me living my growth. I spent 25 years in corporate America, and this was a dream I've always had. So on the screen is my contact information. If you have any questions or you'd like to continue the conversation or maybe book me. Thank you very much. And I want to end, one more thing. I want to end with a toast, and I'm going to use my nose to make sure I don't mess it up. So I'd like everyone to hold their drinks in the air, please. To grow. May embrace the journey of self-creation. May you find clarity in balance in the sweet, strong, and sour of your choosing, shaken with your purpose. Here's the art of living, the science of thriving, and the magic of being all that you can be. Cheers.